You look around and the world tells you it's over. The relationship that crushed you, gone. The sirens outside, silent now. The city rebuilt the bridge. The hospital signed your discharge papers. The danger, whatever it was, has passed. But inside, there are still shards scattered across the floor. Any sudden noise makes you flinch. Any news that sounds even remotely similar steals the breath from your lungs. You know theoretically, intellectually, that you're safe now. But your body never got that memo. It's still bracing, still scanning, still waiting for the next blow. And then comes the guilt, doesn't it? That quiet, insistent whisper, I survived. I should be grateful. Why am I still like this? Then the shame creeps in, small, persistent, suffocating. Do they think I'm exaggerating? Am I being dramatic? And underneath it all, a question you barely dare to speak aloud. Where was God in all of this? If you're listening to this, chances are you've walked through something bigger than any preparation could have readied you for. A serious accident, time in the ICU, violence, abuse, war, disaster, forced migration, loss stacked upon loss, like bricks on a chest that can barely breathe. This isn't drama, this is hard reality. And here's what no one tells you. When you live through extremes, you don't just bounce back on command. Your entire system shifts into what I call war mode, a constellation of adjustments your body and mind make to keep you alive. Alarms set too high, sentries posted at every corner of your consciousness, escape routes mapped and memorized, always open, always ready. This saved you during the crisis. It kept your heart beating when everything was falling apart. The problem is, when the danger passes and the system stays locked in that position, that's when the intrusions begin, memories that invade without invitation, crashing through your day like uninvited guests. That's when avoidance starts shrinking the map of your life, closing off streets you used to walk, rooms you used to enter. That's when hypervigilance drains you dry, and emotional numbness wraps around you like a protective blanket that also isolates you from everyone you love. It makes sense that you're like this after what you've been through. This is not a character flaw. This is not a failure of faith. This is your organism doing everything it knows how to do to maintain some sense of control. After the uncontrollable tore through your life, let me give you an image to carry with you, just one, and we'll return to it again and again. A house after the storm. The house represents you, your body, your memories, your relationships, your faith. The storm is the extreme experience you survived. When the winds came howling, you did what you had to do. You locked the doors, you boarded the windows, you shoved furniture against the rising water, and it worked. The structure held. You're still standing, but now the rain has stopped, and the locks are still jammed. Entire rooms remain sealed off, too painful to enter. The wiring sparks and hums. There are cracks in the walls. The smell of dampness lingers in corners you try to ignore. The house survived because you were fast, because you were strong, but now it needs a different kind of care. Inspection, reinforcement, light again. That's what we're doing here. Turning on the flashlight, naming the cracks, showing you where to begin the repair. This isn't about romanticizing your pain or telling you to forgive and move on. It's about offering you language, a map, and small pathways forward. Because yes, it is possible to build a new kind of safety without erasing your history, by integrating it. Before he became a famous figure in sacred texts, Job was simply a human being standing in the wreckage of an impossible sequence. He had done everything right. By every measure, every standard, every expectation, he was a good man, faithful, generous, devoted. And then, in a span so short, it defied comprehension. The storm took almost everything. his wealth, his children, his health, his standing. One loss crashing into the next, like waves that refuse to let you breathe between swells. The violence wasn't just material. It struck at the very core of his identity. Father of whom? Master of what? The coordinates by which he understood himself were swept away, leaving him stranded in a landscape he no longer recognized. While his body ached on the outside, sores, fever, exhaustion inside, he was trying to assemble a puzzle with no edges. How can this be happening to me? If you've survived the ICU, the assault, the collapse, you know this dialogue between scars and memory. The way your skin pulls tight over old wounds. The way your chest accelerates when a certain date approaches on the calendar. The way your stomach clenches at a smell, a sound, a shadow that looks too much like before. Job sat on the ground. He tore his clothes. He mourned. He did not pose for a picture of triumph. He argued. He questioned. He poured out his anguish to God and to his friends. And what did his friends do? What so many people still do when someone they love is at the breaking point. They explained. They moralized. They suggested blame. You must have done something. This is a test. Just endure. Hold on to your faith. Phrases that sound like wisdom but land like stones on a chest already struggling to breathe. Here's what Job's story exposes. A belief most of us carry without realizing it, the myth of the just world. If I do everything right, truly terrible things won't happen to me. This belief gives us an illusion of control, a sense that the universe operates on fair terms. But when catastrophe strikes out of nowhere, that belief shatters like glass. I followed the rules. Why did this happen? Job's storm presses its finger directly into that wound. And throughout his story, he refuses the easy answers. He insists on his pain. He speaks directly to God. He demands his own voice be heard. This is not a script of perfect holiness. This is a mirror that reflects what it means to be human in the aftermath of devastation, confused, angry, desperate for meaning, yet unwilling to accept explanations that erase the reality of what was lost. Job teaches us something profound. Grief does not need to be polite. Questions do not equal faithlessness. And sometimes, the most sacred thing you can do is refuse to let anyone shrink your pain into a lesson it was never meant to be. So what actually happens within you when the storm hits? First, there's shock. Your body shifts into survival mode before your conscious mind even registers the threat. Fight, flight, or clinical terms for something far more primal. You attacked, you ran, or you went still, hoping not to be seen. In those moments, your brain isn't building a beautiful narrative. It's not organizing memories into neat chapters. It's keeping you alive. And to do that, it records everything in fragments, disconnected pieces of sound, image, sensation, frozen in time like shards of a broken mirror. Later, those fragments resurface uninvited. A smell, a flash of color, a sound that shouldn't mean anything but sends your heart racing. Nightmares that replay scenes you'd give anything to forget. Your mind, desperate to make sense of the senseless, begins constructing explanations, harsh beliefs designed to restore some illusion of control. It was my fault. The world is completely dangerous. God abandoned me. I attract bad things. I'm broken now, damaged beyond repair. These aren't truths. They're survival strategies. Your psyche's attempt to organize chaos, but they come at a terrible cost. The next phase is protection. You start avoiding places, conversations, people. You check the locks twice, 3 times. You sit with your back against the wall in restaurants. You plan obsessively for things you can't actually control. You freeze your emotions because feeling anything fully might cause you to crumble. And here's the painful paradox. It works until it doesn't. Your body pays the price in exhaustion, chronic pain, irritability, sleepless nights. Your relationships pay in distance, while you didn't consciously build, but can't seem to tear down. Your faith pays in uncomfortable silence, prayers that feel like they're hitting the ceiling and falling back. Decades of research from institutions like the Harvard Center on the Developing Child and the National Institute of Mental Health have documented this connection between extreme experiences and prolonged states of alert, not to frighten you, but to validate what you already feel in your bones, to say, this is real, and there are pathways through it. In simpler words, your body is not working against you. It simply hasn't learned yet that the danger has passed. Some people grow up with a basic sense of safety, a belief that if they do their part, the worst can be avoided. Others are born into minefields, repeated violence, abandonment, war. They carry the weight of a world that was never safe to begin with. When extreme experience arrives, that foundation matters. But regardless of your history, one truth emerges clearly. What troubles you today is what kept you alive back then. And if it was a survival strategy, it deserves respect. It also deserves an update. Just as Job sat in ashes, his body screaming while his mind scrambled for meaning, you too may find yourself caught between what saved you and what now holds you captive. The walls you built in the storm were necessary, but the storm has passed. Now, we learn to unlock the doors. Here is the paradox that keeps so many of us trapped. The very virtues that saved you in the storm, your resilience, your focus, your ability to harden and endure, your fierce sense of responsibility, can become a prison when the context changes. Think about it. The one who learned to map every emergency exit in a dangerous neighborhood still maps exits in the movie theater, in the church pew, in the grocery store. The one who survived by being good, by never causing trouble, by shrinking themselves small enough to be invisible, they're still swallowing everything, still silencing their needs so they won't inconvenience anyone. The one who held the entire family together during crisis still refuses to ask for help, still carries weight that was never meant for one pair of shoulders. Without boundaries, courage becomes burnout. Faith becomes an impossible demand you can never satisfy. Responsibility becomes self-abandonment dressed in noble clothing. What saved you back then is exhausting you now. You don't have to stay in war mode forever. This is where Job's story cuts deep. Here was a man who had done everything right, exemplary in every way society measured worth, and yet, in the ashes of his unimaginable loss, he had to confront something terrifying. He was human. He didn't have all the answers. He couldn't think or pray or perform his way out of this devastation. What Job needed wasn't another theological explanation. It wasn't more advice from well-meaning friends who spoke confidently about things they didn't understand. What he needed was real encounter, presence, something that could hold the weight of his questions without demanding he stop asking them. This is the invitation that trauma extends to all of us, though it feels like anything but a gift. The invitation to stop pretending we have it all together, to admit that the armor we built to survive is now too heavy to carry, to acknowledge that the house we fortified against the storm cannot remain boarded up forever. Here's what I want you to understand. The house after the storm will never be exactly what it was before. That version is gone, but it can become habitable again, perhaps even safer than before, with reinforced foundations, with furniture rearranged in ways that serve who you are now rather than who you used to be. But this requires renovation, not denial. Denial says, nothing happened, I'm fine, keep moving. Renovation says, something significant happened here. Let me assess the damage honestly. Let me strengthen what needs strengthening. Let me open windows that have been sealed too long. The walls you built were necessary. The vigilance that kept you alive was a gift. But seasons change, and the same instincts that protected you in winter will suffocate you in spring if you don't learn to adapt. Job had to let go of being the man with all the answers to become the man brave enough to sit in the questions. Perhaps that's your invitation too. Let me describe where war mode shows up in ordinary life, so you can recognize yourself without the weight of clinical labels. It's going to the grocery store and automatically tracking who enters and who leaves. It's being unable to sit with your back to the door in a restaurant, needing to see every exit, every face, every possible threat. It's the way fireworks make your chest tighten. How a siren or a sudden shout sends electricity down your spine before your mind can even register what happened. It's waking up drenched in sweat, heart pounding against your ribs, with only fragments of a dream you can't quite piece together. It's cancelling plans at the last minute because something inside you whispers, "I can't do this today," and you don't even know why. It's sitting in church with your body in the pew and your soul hovering somewhere outside the building, watching through glass. It's functioning on the outside work, kids, bills, responsibilities, checked off, while inside there's a nameless exhaustion, a quiet wish to disappear for just a little while. It's dates on the calendar that tighten your chest before you consciously remember why, smells that grab your stomach and won't let go, hugs your body rejects before your mind can understand. And then the question that haunts you, nothing happened today. Why am I so tense? Because the house is still locked for the storm. Sometimes you even avoid joy because relaxing feels dangerous. Letting your guard down seems like an invitation for the next catastrophe. And when someone says, "But you got out of there, you survived, it's over," something inside you whispers back, "I got out on the outside. Inside, there's still water in the basement." If any of this describes you, hear me clearly. This doesn't diminish you, it informs you. Job knew this tension. In the aftermath of losing everything, he couldn't simply move on because the calendar changed. His friends saw a man sitting in ashes long after the initial tragedy. They wondered why he couldn't just accept their explanations and return to normal. But Job understood something they didn't. The storm may have passed in the sky, but it was still raging in his bones. Let me offer you 3 questions, not to wound, but to illuminate. Where did you say "I'm fine" while your body screamed otherwise? In which relationship do you call your silence peace? What request have you postponed because asking might make you look weak? If any of these land somewhere tender, breathe, just breathe. You are not weak. You were exposed to things no one should have to witness. What you lived through was extreme. Your body isn't exaggerating, it's remembering. And memory, especially the kind that lives in your muscles and your nervous system, doesn't follow the same timeline as the calendar on your wall. The healing isn't about forgetting. It's about teaching your body what your mind already knows. That was then. This is now. Now let's draw a micro route toward the exit. This isn't instant healing, there's no such thing. But it is a possible beginning. First, name the extremity of what you lived. As long as you call it no big deal. The fog fills every room of the house. When you name it, you give it edges. Speak it aloud if you can, or write it down. What I went through was bigger than I could handle alone at that time. It wasn't drama. It was extreme. It makes sense that I'm like this after what happened. Saying this doesn't trap you. It organizes you. Second, tend to your body as the place where the alarm lives. Trauma resides deeply in the body. Starting there is simpler than confronting the entire archive of memories at once. Try brief grounding exercises, not miracles, but solid ground beneath your feet. Feel your feet on the floor. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. Lengthen your exhale for 2 minutes. Look around and whisper, right now, right here, The danger from before isn't present. I can take one step at a time. My body is remembering, but I am here in the present. Do this several times a day, like opening windows in a house that's been sealed too long, letting fresh air finally circulate. Third, build an island of relational safety. Isolation feeds war mode. Choose one reasonably trustworthy person to share a little more truth with without graphs, without triggering details. A friend, a family member, a sensitive spiritual leader, a support group. Practice clear requests and boundaries, like installing reinforced walls. I want to tell you something difficult I went through. I don't need advice, just someone who'll listen without judgment. There's a subject that's still very sensitive for me. Can we go slowly? If I start getting overwhelmed, I'll signal you and we can pause. This isn't weakness, it's reconstruction. Fourth, consider specialized professional help. Trauma-focused therapies are like crews entering your house with the right equipment, helping organize memory, recalibrate the alarm system, work through beliefs of guilt and shame, create new pathways between sealed-off rooms. Sometimes well-prescribed medication helps lower the siren enough so you can sleep and begin repairs. Asking for help doesn't diminish what you've already endured. It expands what's possible from here forward. You don't have to carry alone a story that was too heavy even for trained professionals. Fifth, slowly reopen the conversation with God and with meaning. If the storm cracked your faith, that deserves naming too. Job wasn't condemned for lamenting, questioning, protesting. You can say, God, I don't know what to do with this. I'm here, but I'm angry. Today, the most I can manage is silence. Maybe that's already prayer. I don't need to understand everything to start caring for myself today. This isn't performance, it's presence. It's leaving one room with the light on, even when you don't yet know how to arrange the rest. For daily life, keep phrases that protect your energy while you power down war mode. I want to help, and today I can't. I can handle this part. The rest I can't guarantee. I need to think I'll respond tomorrow. Thank you for the invitation. I'll pass this time. Repeat them until your body believes it can exist without apologizing for having needs. Let's return now to the mirror of Job, not to moralize, not to promise your ending will look like his, but to see what becomes possible when someone refuses to be silenced by catastrophe. Job moved through shock, through revolt, through desperate attempts to make sense of the senseless. He refused the phrases that minimized his pathos, well-meaning words from friends who had never sat where he sat, never felt ash beneath their skin, never watched everything they'd built disappear in a single afternoon. He insisted on being heard, not by people with tidy answers, but by God himself. And here's what's remarkable. With time, Job found a way forward, not a way back. There was no going back, but forward, carrying a more complex understanding of life, of suffering, of what it means to be human in a world that doesn't always make sense. His story doesn't erase the losses. It doesn't romanticize the scars or pretend they were worth it for some greater lesson. What it shows is this: existing after catastrophe isn't about returning to who you were before. It's about becoming someone else, marked, yes, but still alive with possibilities. When Job cried out that he wished he had never been born, he wasn't being dramatic. He was giving language to the true dimension of his pain. Perhaps you felt that too. Perhaps you've thought it in your darkest moments and felt too ashamed to say it aloud. Job says it for you. He makes room for that level of honesty. And when he rejected the easy explanations, the formulas that blamed him, the theology that demanded he smile through the ashes, he authorized all of us to reject the burdens others try to place on shoulders already breaking. Here's what strikes me most about Job's relationship with God. It survives the fire. It doesn't become simple. It doesn't resolve into perfect understanding. There's encounter and there's friction. There's silence that stretches unbearably long. And then there's a response, not one that draws a map of why, but one that restores horizon, that says, you are seen and there is still a future. For those who believe, reopening this conversation with God can be part of rebuilding meaning. Honest prayers, angry prayers, prayers that are nothing but silence and presence. For those who don't believe, reconstructing meaning is equally possible. Naming what matters, recovering small pleasures, returning to gestures that anchor you in the world. Morning coffee held in both hands, a walk where you actually notice the trees, a conversation where you let yourself be known. The point is the same for everyone. The house can become habitable again. Not the same house, not the house from before the storm, but a house where you can sleep without one eye open, where you can invite people in, where light comes through windows you once thought would stay boarded forever. Job walked out of the ashes not unchanged, but alive, and so can you. Remember the metaphor we've carried all this way. The house after the storm, it's still standing because you knew what to do. Locks secured, boards nailed over windows, furniture pushed against the rising water. Everything you did in those desperate moments, it saved the structure. It saved you. Now let me return to the thesis that has guided us from the beginning. Spoken early so it could echo through every chapter. When someone lives through something extreme, the body and mind shift into war mode to ensure survival. This mode saved you during the crisis, but it can stay activated long after the danger has passed, bringing intrusions, hypervigilance, guilt, shame, and an aching difficulty to trust. This pattern is not a life sentence. With naming, with understanding, with support, with sustained care, it is possible to build a new kind of safety, to reconstruct bonds and meaning, not by erasing what happened, but by integrating it into the larger story of who you are becoming. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself walking back into your house. The floors have dried, the windows are open now, and sunlight streams through glass that was boarded up for so long. The electrician came and replaced the wiring that used to hum and spark. Some rooms still have yellow caution tape across the doorway. That's okay. You're not pretending everything is finished, but you move through the space more freely now. You turn on lights that haven't worked in months. You invite trusted people to sit in the kitchen while the roof is still being repaired. You don't wait for perfection to begin living again. You don't have to stay in war mode forever. What saved you back then can now be tended to, recalibrated, honored for what it did, and gently released from active duty. If all you can do right now is recognize this one truth: what I lived through was extreme, and I deserve care, that is enough. That is more than enough. It's a dignified beginning, and dignified beginnings are the kind of ground where God and life know how to work. So in the next 24 hours, choose one small gesture. Speak an anchor phrase out loud. Do a 2-minute grounding exercise. Send a message to schedule a safe conversation. Research a mental health service in your area. Write an honest prayer as short as your breath allows today. One gesture. Then notice your breathing. You are not what was done to you. You are not only the day everything collapsed. You are someone in reconstruction. Like Job, who walked out of the ashes, not unchanged but undeniably alive, still asking questions, still in relationship, still moving toward a horizon he couldn't yet see. Let me say it once more, the way we began. When someone lives through something extreme, the body and mind enter war mode to survive. Choose one small gesture in the next 24 hours and notice how your inner house responds.